All right, so this is being recorded to YouTube via Unlisted. These will be available for you guys and probably made public in a week or two, a couple of weeks. But this way, if you do miss anything, it's all recorded. We're live. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So I wanted to share something with you real quick before we get started into Kaya Nupassana. I want to go over the first part. This is a very important part. This is the beginning of the 4 foundations of Mindfulness Sutta. It says, mendicants, the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation are a path to convergence. Now here, this is Bhante Sujato's translation. The Pali here is Ekkayano ayang bhikkhave maggo sattanang visuddhya. So this is the Buddha saying here, this is the direct path, the only path for the purification of beings. That's the way Bhante Sujata, Bhikkhu Bodhi translates it. So this word here is actually quite important, Ekkayano. If you want to purify yourself, if you want to continuing on, actually I forgot, they are in order to purify sentient beings, to get past sorrow and crying, to make an end of pain and sadness, to end the cycle of suffering, and to realize extinguishment. This is a heavy paragraph at the very beginning. It sets up what they are for the ending of suffering, for the purification of the mind. This is the one path. And we see this importance in the Noble Eightfold Path. If we see the Noble Eightfold Path, the 7th factor is sammasati, right mindfulness. What is right mindfulness? Listed under this, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So the importance of the 4 foundations of mindfulness to the path cannot be understated. It cannot be understated. This is a practice that allows us to see things as they are, to purify the mind. And because we are beings that have been born into these form human bodies, one of the most important things to understand as it is, to help us understand the reality of our experience, is understanding the body. It's Kaya Nupassana. Kaya means body. Nupassana is a word we'll see, because each of the 4 is a Nupassana. This means to contemplate, to investigate, to meditate on, both in the old meaning of meditation and the modern Buddhist meditation meaning. Right? These are, because not every one of these tools in the toolbox of Satipatthana is a meditation. There's also reflections, contemplations, recollections. There's a whole toolbox of things here for us to practice. And under Kaya Nupassana, the Buddha gives us a few ways in which we can investigate what this body is, to understand really what this body is. That's the point of this. First is mindfulness of breathing. Mindfulness of breathing, the Buddha says in Anapanasati Sutta, that's the translation to English is mindfulness of breathing, that the breath is a body among the bodies. So it makes sense that it would be here. When you are breathing, you are observing an aspect of the body. This body needs to breathe. It's been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. It's breathing. And we don't pay attention to it normally, unless you have breathing issues like myself, if you have asthma or allergies or all kinds of gunk and mucus and things like that, then we pay attention to it. But when you practice mindfulness of breathing, you are practice one aspect of understanding this body. So when you take a few deep breaths, you can understand, okay, this body is breathing. You can understand what this body is doing. The 3 deep breaths thing is actually quite an interesting technique that I was taught to, and I don't remember exactly the specifics of how I taught, but how I developed with it was that I would take my 3 deep breaths. No matter if I was doing walking meditation, sitting meditation, or whenever I just wanted to pause, I would take 3 deep breaths at the start. And then years later, I realized that I trained my mind that 3 deep breaths equals go quiet, and it's time for meditation. So I later used it as a life hack, as they would say. So like anytime I was in a tough situation and I needed to just stop and calm my mind, I'd stop, take 3 deep breaths, and my mind would go calm, just like that. So it's a very important thing to practice for our practice to understand these things. You can use that as a hack, training your mind. Now it's time to investigate. Now it's time to meditate by taking 3 deep breaths. And when we understand the breath, we understand a part of this body, what this body is. And when we experience the lack of ability to breathe, we really also understand what this body is, what this body requires, what this body lives on, right? These things. The second of the tools, the second of the aspects of the body that the Buddha gives us to reflect on is our posture. The Buddha talks about often, whether you are walking, sitting, lying down, standing, or whenever awake, one should develop this mindfulness. You see that in the Metta Sutta, right? The 4 postures: sitting, standing, walking, lying down. And indeed, you read the suttas, you see the Buddha and the monastics meditating and practicing in all of those 4 postures. The 4 postures is a good practice for beginners and for starting out, because it is a easier thing to understand than, say, something as subtle as the breath, or as subtle as the aspects of the body we're going to get into. Right? Somebody can understand, oh, I'm sitting, I'm standing, I'm walking, I'm lying down. What does it feel like? What is it like? What's the experience of sitting, walking, standing, lying down? The Buddha, I mentioned the word yesterday, but the Buddha here wants us to know these postures with pajanati. Not just simply, oh yeah, I'm just sitting. No, but to really understand this, how this body is placed in this posture. It's also a nice go-to practice for, say, you're driving and you get stuck in traffic and your mind starts to get agitated and your mind starts to worry about you're going to be late for this and late for that. Bring your mind to the posture. Bring your mind to the body. Focus in your experience on, okay, this body is sitting and I can, the legs, the right leg is on the gas or whatever, the pedals, the left leg is resting here. The buttocks is positioned in such a way. The back is positioned in such a way. Observing how this posture, the body posture, that can help you to focus. It can help you to come back. And then you maybe even take 3 deep breaths, right? As 2 things. They're always coming back to the body. To understand the posture deeply. Pajanati means with deep experiential wisdom. Not just to understand, yeah, I'm sitting. What's to know about that? That's boring. That's not how it goes. This is to understand this posture. What is this posture? And as we'll see, these 4 patanas, these 4 bases are not independent of each other. Right? When you start to observe the body, the posture of the body, you'll start to see I am experiencing this feeling, the feeling of the butt sitting on the chair, right? The feeling of the feet pressing against the pedal, these kind of things, right? They're all intertwined in that way. So you can, in one experience, you can experience all 4 of the patanas, all 4 of them. Right? And so that's an important thing to understand. So the next is a very important practice. It's called sampajanya. So when you read the Satipatthana, and I'm going through these quite fast because I realize I have limited time and I want to get to more talking about implementing them and working with them, right? I'm just kind of going through these because you can read these, you can go read the sutta, you can, look at the mind map and all that kind of stuff to get a deeper thing. But I want to kind of give a survey of it and then talk more in general terms of implementing these and practicing these in your various activities of life. So then sampajanya. So almost always when you see the Buddha talk about practicing mindfulness, you don't just see sati, you see sati sampajanya. These 2 words as a compound word, as one word. You might have heard the English translation as mindfulness and clear comprehension. Again, this is a clear comprehension with pajanati. Someone is clearly aware, fully understanding what they're doing when they're walking, when they're standing, when they're sitting, when they're falling asleep, when they're going to and fro, like doing walking meditation, when they are speaking, when they are being silent, when they are even going to the bathroom. No matter what they're doing, drinking, eating, these are all from the list that the Buddha gives. And yes, the Buddha even says to be mindful and clearly aware when you're going to the bathroom. So next time, don't bring your phone into the bathroom or the newspaper. Be fully aware of what's happening. Right? That's how you understand the nature of this body. The nature of this body and how it works. And so this is a practice of being fully aware of all of your activities. There's not an activity, as I said yesterday, there's not an activity that you can't apply Satipatthana to, that you can investigate and practice. There's not one activity while you are conscious. Dreaming, not so much. When you're knocked out or asleep, you don't have consciousness. Hard to do any real practice. But as long as you're awake, and no matter what you're doing, you can practice. I keep repeating that because it's a mindset, right? This is a mindset to develop. And I'll talk about this more when I go over the mindfulness of eating before lunch, after the meditation, when I talk about the simile of the ember. So sampajanya is to be clearly comprehending, understanding what you are doing. Because normally we walk around on autopilot. We're just allowing things to go and happen while our mind is worrying over one or two things, specific things. But there's a whole world of activities going on with the body and the mind that we're just not aware of. We're not paying attention to. The next one that I want to go over is the four elements. The Buddha uses the contemplation, reflection on the body being made of elements. Now, in modern times, we can break out the periodic table and we can say, well, the body is made of, carbon this and has a little bit of, silicon here or whatever here, little bits of this, little bits of that, all kinds of things. And the same kind of framework is used in the ancient times, although it's simplified. So the Buddha talks about the elements, four elements: earth, water, fire, and wind. And so this is a reflection on understanding how these various elements have come together to comprise this body. Earth is solid, right? Skin, bones, teeth, sinews, muscle, joints. That's earth. You can reflect on these things in the body. Water, same thing. They say the body is like 70% water. All the different liquids in the body: blood, pus, urine. All the different ways, bile, all the different liquids that the various organs use. That's all water element. Fire element is related to the temperature, right? The heat of the body. If you've been around, somebody a body that's deceased, and you touch it, it can be very cold because the heat has left the body. So fire is this heat, like they also understood it to kind of be connected with the life element, right? The heat is the life element. And then wind is the various air winds in the body. The lungs, right? The air coming in and out of the lungs. Gaseousness coming out of the back end, right? All kinds of different air pockets and various things that might be in the body. So you can reflect on the body in terms of its elements. You can also reflect on the body in terms of its parts. This is another aspect of the body. So the Buddha originally gives 31 parts. It's added then 32 parts. The brain is added later. But again, this is something that when you reflect on it, in modern times, we're aware of many, many more parts of the body. And if you'd like to, you can reflect on all the various parts of the body. So the Buddha will say this body has head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, bones, sinew, blood, pus, tear, sweat, all these kind of things. He goes through this list. And I believe you can see, let me see, can you see? I think I put all of them in there. Maybe I didn't. Oh, no, I didn't. All right. You're going to have to go to the sutta for that, not on the, it would have taken up too much on the mind map that I made. But so this is a reflection on these things. To reflect the Pali word here is patikula manasikara. Patikula means like to, usually it's translated as repulsiveness, right? And we have kind of a negative connotation for that. We think we're trying to make ourselves gross and like throw up. That's not what this means. All of these, when we're reflecting on the body, we're trying to understand exactly what this body is. And in this section, if you read the sutta, and in this section on the, actually, you know what? Maybe I should, I don't think I linked the actual sutta to you guys. So maybe I should link the sutta for you. I'll put that in the chat. It's Majjhima Nikaya number 10. All right. Okay, so as I was saying, you're reflecting on these 32 parts of the body, not to gross yourself out, although that might happen because you've gone most of your life not reflecting on things like the nature of this body, reflecting on the nature of the fact that you're going to grow old, get sick, and die. All of these things that the Buddha wants us to reflect on are things that we actively avoid reflecting on. So when we start to reflect on these things, yeah, well, grossness will come up and fear will come up and unpleasant feelings will come up. That's normal. The goal is not to gross yourself out. The goal is to understand. And the more you do these practices, the more you understand the body, then it's not gross. It's not fearful. It's just a reflection on understanding. So reflecting on these 32 parts, if you read the sutta, there's a simile that the Buddha gives, that this is kind of how the mindset should be. Because normally you think, oh, think about all the grossness, like the body parts, the intestines and feces and all these things, and like grossness is out. But the Buddha gives a simile of somebody who is with good eyesight looking at a bag, and in that bag there's rice and grains and millets and all kinds of things, and the person picks up and says, oh, this is red rice, this is white rice, this is such and such a bean, that's such and such a bean. And if you look carefully, what's missing from that simile is reaction and like and dislike. You're just identifying, this is hill rice, this is mung bean. And so when you look at the body, you say, oh, this is the body. Drool comes out of the mouth, other things come out of other places. It's just normal. It's just the way it is. This is understanding the body as it is. As the body gets old, as the body gets sick, understanding the body as it is. Actually, when you understand the body as it is, when you do these reflections, you really do understand and have much more acceptance when the body breaks down. Just like your car, just like your house needs maintenance, just like all the things that we own outside of the body, or we think we own anyway, we have to maintain them. So too does this body. This body is like a biological machine. It breaks down. Right? Things happen. It goes through its natural processes. Food comes in one way, it goes through the processes, and it comes out the other end. That's normal. That's natural processes. So that's an important thing to understand. And then finally, the last part of the body is the 9 charnel ground contemplations. Now, charnel ground is a place in ancient India where it seemed to be like kind of like an all-in-one. It's a place where people left bodies to decay. It's a place where maybe, I don't know if burying bodies is something specific. I don't think that that's it specifically in there, but it's a place where kind of like outside of the village where dead bodies go, whether it's to be cremated, whether it's to be left to decay, whatever it is, that's the place where dead bodies go. And so this was a place that the Buddha encouraged monks to practice it, to go and practice in there, to really see the nature of this body. And so people would go and bring dead bodies, and you can go and reflect and you can observe. Like the closest thing to that these days, at least in America, would be like, scientists have these things called body farms. You can donate your body to science, and then they put your body in a place and they test and they observe decomposition in various different, different environments and different, and so you could walk around this body farm and just see all kinds of various bodies and states of decomposition. I think most people would not want to go to this place. I actually looked into the possibility of donating my body to one of those places, because actually those body farms have really helped in solving a lot of like murders and keeping innocent people from going to jail, and it's a really good thing. And it's also a good thing to see the nature of this body. And so the Buddha says, the Buddha says, it is as if. So the Buddha is saying, you're not going to be around a charnel ground, but you should reflect on the nature of how this body decays after the body dies. It starts out, the body bloats, and that's what happens. If you've been around bodies, all the liquids come all out. And then, if it's out in nature, the beings whose job it is to clean up the nature of dead things comes and eats the body. And then so it starts out with the dead body just dead, and it ends with the bones are dust. So it's like the body is literally just turned into dust. And you reflect on these things. This is a powerful reflection, because it reflects on the nature of the body if left to its natural devices. And the fact that this body that we hold on to will just be dust, right? That's from the Christian perspective. You have from dust to dust, right? Reflecting this body that I hold on to, that I'm so attached to, well, it'll be dust one day. And of course, in modern society, we hide away. We make the corpse all pretty, and we inject it with all kinds of things. And then, there's an open casket and people go and it's like, oh, they look so wonderful. They look so beautiful, And I remember, I always talk about this, but I remember going to a funeral. I've been to a lot of funerals in my life, and from a young age. And I remember somebody saying, oh, they look better than they did a week or two ago, about the corpse. Right. And I thought, oh boy, like that's something that was such a kind of silly, shocking, absurd thing to hear, but it made a point, didn't it? It's something I still remember to this day, to really understand the nature of this body and how we want to we're attached to the bodies of ourselves and others so much that we want to spend money for an iron fortress. We put the body in a coffin, and then we bury it underground. And then, we might think, well, eventually it will decay, but maybe that'll be long after I'm gone, so I won't have to worry about it. These kind of things. So that's a real quick, again, it's just a quick survey, right? We don't have enough time. I could do like a week-long Satipatthana retreat, maybe even 2 weeks. I could probably break the Satipatthana is very deep, and it can go for a long time. I'm actually thinking about doing an ongoing Zoom session, like just an hour long over weeks, going over in detail everything about Satipatthana. But we only have a weekend. So consider this to be like a survey and how we can implement this into our daily lives. So these aspects, what are these aspects of the body? Reflecting on what the body is, how the posture of the body, what it's made up of, both in the elements and the body parts, what is the nature of the body, how the body will end up, right? These are all techniques, tools. These are all practices, contemplations that are for us to fully understand, to come to pajanati about this body, what this body is, and how we actually act regarding bodies. But not only Satipatthana, it's important at the end of each section, the Buddha says to reflect on the body internally and externally. So this body and bodies outside of this body. The bodies of other people, the bodies of other beings, the bodies of all kinds of bodies. And so that also reflects on it. I was like, oh, okay, I have this body and it has all these intestines and gross things because you haven't practiced enough, it's still gross. And, this body, ejects waste out of it. And that's not a pleasant experience. But then you see you're totally attracted to this person. Oh, this person is so hot, or so this or so that. And then like all of the other things that you reckon, like that's all gone. Like you don't remember like, oh, well, they also have a body. It's the same body as mine. It does the same processes. What is this thing that I'm so attracted to this body that I neglect all kinds of other things, including even the fact that understanding that the body is connected to a being, right? We can use other people's bodies for our own enjoyment, our own pleasure. So we reflect on these understanding the body in this way can lead to so much insight, so much wisdom about things in our life, reflecting on these things. Right? What this body is. And so there's so many different ways you can bring yourself to the body, that you can reflect on the body during your daily life. Walking meditation is really good for that. Because when you do walking meditation, you're focusing on the feet, right? The feeling of the feet pressing against the floor. And then as your concentration, your stillness of mind gets very strong, then you start to understand like the tendons in the legs and all these other things. If you start, as we're going to do the guided meditation, if you start doing a body scan before your meditation, that's Satipatthana. So that's an extra Satipatthana practice. It really allows you to understand the body in very deep detail over time, over practicing it. It also allows you to understand how your posture impacts your pain while you're sitting. Right? And so oh, okay, my posture is off a little bit. And I know from experience that is going to cause me pain at about 25 minutes in. And of course, people will say, well, okay, so you see the tendons in your legs moving. Well, what the heck does that have to do with anything? It has everything to do with everything, because it's detail. You're you're developing an attention to small details. And when you're able to develop an attention to small details in the body, then you can observe so many things. So many of the ways that our mind is feeling, we actually can notice first by our body. Maybe our mind is anxious, but we can't understand. But we can notice, oh, things are kind of tight. Things are kind of tense. Oh, I have anxiety right now. You can even observe, if you observe fear a lot, I've spent so much time, even before I was a Buddhist, like observing fear and working with fear and conquering fear, that actually I notice fear from the body first. Because there's certain things that I've noticed that when my mind is fearful, my body gives off certain cues. This is a powerful tool. You're in a conversation with somebody, and you're talking and you're listening. All of a sudden you notice, I don't know, maybe your body, you're kind of subconsciously leaning back from the person, or you notice something going on with your body that gives you a hint as to how you're feeling mentally, understanding about what's happening to you. This is understanding things with pajanati, with deep mindfulness and clear comprehension, allows you to see things that you're in a situation with 10 other people. You're all in a room, all 10 of you. You're the only one that has this practice. You see opportunities, you see things that none of the other people are seeing. And you can say, oh, wait, no, I see this. And then the other people say, oh, wow, this is amazing. Thank you. This helps us. But they couldn't see it because they had not developed their Satipatthana. They had not developed their mindfulness to understand these things. And so never think that bringing your awareness to the body is something that is minor, or seeing like, oh, I saw all these things. Yeah, but what use is that going to have? Like, I'll give an example. One thing I noticed from doing lots of walking and standing meditation is that if you're standing and you're really observing, there's no such thing as the body is standing straight up. That doesn't exist. If you're really observing, what's happening is the body is swaying and the tendons are moving to keep it to the middle. And you can observe that. It took me years to observe that. Right? And again, we say, well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, it has a lot of uses, especially if you're an active physical person. Maybe even if you're getting older, right? And you're worried about your hips or falling or all these kind of things. You practice lots of Satipatthana, you can see the early warning signs. You can see, oh, I'm going to lose balance. You can see all of that beforehand. So practice bringing your awareness to the body, understanding the body in all of its aspects is very important, very practical practice, very beneficial practice to our lives to understand that. So you can do this practice, again, anywhere. You're driving. I can remember driving to Bhavana Society. It's a 5-hour drive. And I made the what we call the adhitthana, the aspiration that I'm going to practice Satipatthana and not listen to anything. I'm just going to practice Satipatthana the whole time I'm driving. Observing the body, observing the mind, observing all these things. You do that and you can observe over time how these things, how the body is acting, how the body is placed. You're stuck in traffic, right? Or at a red light. Perfect time. I heard this term a couple of years ago called found time, because I was reading about the growth and popularity of podcasts. I even tried a podcast for a little bit. I might get back to it eventually. And so they're saying like, oh, there's this, found time, like driving to work or, being on the subway or whatever, where you're basically stuck. You can't really do anything. And so people listen to podcasts or whatever. And so I said, oh, the found time is perfect for Satipatthana. Waiting online, At the grocery store, Satipatthana. Stuck in traffic, Satipatthana. When you find opportunities, instead of being like agitated or depressed or anxious about something, I can practice. This is the perfect time for me to practice. You can always, just like you always can come back to your breath, you can always come back to your body. This is one of the things, like even psychologists and stuff, they train people who have like anxiety. Come to your breath or come to your body. Focus on the body. Focus on this. That's an important practice. You can always focus on the body. And when you develop that mindset, then your mind is ready. Always ready to observe what's going on. And so with that, I've gone a couple of minutes over the time I wanted to. So we'll go to our meditation now. So set your body up in whatever posture works for you, whether sitting on a cushion, chair, couch, working with whatever bodily limitations you have, injuries, etc. We'll start with a body scan. This is for two reasons. The first is to slowly bring our minds from the external to the internal, and jumping right to focusing on the breath, which is a subtle thing to follow. It's often much easier to observe the body. The second reason to start with the body scan is to observe the various ways that the way your body is positioned impacts your posture. How a small pain at the beginning or a small imbalance causes much greater pain later on. So if you're sitting for a time, it's always good to spend time scanning through the body so that you can adjust your posture and sit without moving for the longest period of time possible. So bring your awareness to your feet. By bring awareness, this means to pay attention to whatever sensation or feeling arises in that part of the body. For instance, like the feeling of the feet pressing against the floor, the cushion, the other leg, however your body is positioned. Pay attention to that sensation. You're training your mind to observe the body and that which arises. Bring your awareness up through the ankles into the calves. If at any time you're having trouble connecting with a sensation that's arising in part of the body you're focusing on, you can prompt yourself by asking, what do I see? What do I feel? Bring your awareness up through to the knees and into the thighs. If you're sitting on a cushion, paying attention to the knees is very important, both for your posture and so that your legs and knees are not overdone, overstretched, etc. Bring your awareness up through to the hips and pelvis. This is a very important part of the body for posture. The position of the hips and pelvis impacts both the legs and also the way that the spine is positioned. We'll pay attention to how that impacts the lower and the upper body. Think of the lower body as the foundation of a house. If the foundation is sturdy and stable, the rest of the house can rest upon it without fear of falling. Once you've set your lower body up in a comfortable and stable position, then move up the spine through the abdomen and the chest. Ideally, the spine should just be in its neutral position, not leaning or slouching left or right, back or forth. It's that leaning and slouching, bending and compressing of the spine that causes pain in the back if you're meditating on a cushion. Even if you're sitting in a chair or a couch, try to not lean too far back and put too much of your weight on the backstop. This will allow for uninhibited breathing. Bring your awareness to your shoulders, checking that they're hanging loosely, not scrunched up and tight. And then bring your awareness down through to the elbows and hands. And observe how the position of the elbows and hands also impacts your posture. How it can cause the spine to bend. And finally, bring your awareness to the head. In the simile of the house, the lower body being the foundation, and the upper body being the bulk of the house, the head is like the roof. If everything from the foundation up is stable, then the head should also be able to rest comfortably, not leaning and slouching here and there, the chin parallel to the floor. When you set the body up in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, try not to manipulate or control the breath in any way. This body's been breathing from the moment you were born. Will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply observe, investigate, and abide with the breath as this body breathes in and this body breathes out. As you're following the breath, you may find most prominently the feeling of the air coming in and out of the nostrils. You can place your awareness there. If that's hard, you might feel most prominently the feeling of the rise and fall of the chest. You can place your awareness there. Or you can simply abide with the basic understanding that this body is breathing in and this body is breathing out. Friends, we come to our meditation, to this retreat, with many responsibilities, worries, and burdens. Worries of the past, the future, the world, society, families and friends, work and school. Many things that will seek to come to our minds as we practice. For the time of this retreat, let's practice letting go, laying down our burdens. Just as the mighty Atlas from Greek mythology holds the world on his shoulders, so too do we each hold our world on our shoulders, a heavy burden. Remind yourself to practice letting go. Lay down your world and your burdens and follow the breath. As you're following your breath, your mind will become distracted. It will become bored and seek to run away to the past or the future, across the world or the galaxy. Or an external distraction will arise like a sound, and your mind will chase after that. When this happens, understand that this is not a failure on your part. You didn't do anything wrong. This is simply the mind showing you how it works, showing you its craving. Whenever you become distracted, there will be a time that it will slowly start to dawn on you that you've been taken away from the breath. So first acknowledge that you've been taken away from the breath fully. Come back to full awareness and mindfulness. Then practice letting go of the distraction by neither getting agitated and trying to push it away, nor by getting excited and attaching to it. Try to do your best to let go of it, to give it no more energy, no more of your attention, to let it be. If you're able to let it go, it will move on and eventually cease just as it arose. And once you've let go, return to the breath. So whenever distracted away, acknowledge, let go, and return. If you're distracted away 20 times in a minute, then acknowledge, let go, and return 20 times in a minute. Keep coming back to the breath. That is the practice. Slowly calming and stilling the mind, focusing in on the object of the breath. Acknowledge, let go, and return. The breath is home base. It's always there waiting for you. Whenever you want to return, to develop a calm, still mind. Every once in a while you're following your breath, check in with the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more tranquil and peaceful, more focused on the breath, or not? As your mind does become more tranquil and peaceful, it may begin to notice more subtle characteristics of the breath. Sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. Do your best to observe these more subtle characteristics of the breath. Try to see the impermanence and the change in the breath as you go along following it. Acknowledge, let go, and return. For the remainder of the meditation, let's practice reflecting on the nature of this body. How you wish to do it is up to you. If you'd like to use visuals, words, but do an analysis, a scan of this body, understand all the various parts that this body is made up of. You can reflect on the bones, the skeleton structure, the muscles, the skin, all the various systems, respiratory system, reproductive system, blood vessels, however you wish. Just spend this time reflecting on what this body is. Slowly open your eyes. Come out of the practice from the internal back out to the external. All right, friends. So we will go over mindfulness of eating. Speaking of which, however, I want to give you guys a video. All right. So this is a video of me giving an instruction on walking meditation. So if you've never done walking meditation, you want an instruction. This is a video from a retreat at Bhavana years ago where I gave a pretty in-depth walking instruction. So you can check that out for the walking meditation later at 1. And then for right now, we're going to go over mindfulness of eating and the simile of the ember, which is the link here. This is another thing that you can check out during your break if you like. All right, so mindfulness of eating. So normally what happens with most people, especially if they are brand new to meditation or not really Buddhist, don't really understand, like they're not practicing like the Full Noble Eightfold Path, they're kind of being taught various different things. They might get the impression that the practice is sitting on the cushion. And sitting on the cushion is part of the practice, but it's only part. So the average person's maybe a beginner. The average person might come up to they might hear the thing, well, you should practice a half hour in the morning and a half hour in the evening. And so you wake up, and before you go to work, you practice a half hour. And the first 25 minutes is just your mind going over everything that might or could or would or should happen today. And then the last couple minutes, the mind grows calm and quiet. And then ding, the meditation's over. And you get up and you rush out and you go for the day. And then at the end of the day, you come back and you say, well, they say I should meditate for a half hour before I go to bed. So, you sit down to meditate, and the first 25 minutes is all about what happened during the day. I can't believe this person did this or that, or all of these kind of things, like recounting the day, and maybe even worries about the next day, or I don't want to go to bed because then I have to wake up and go to the work the next day. All of these things keep your mind occupied. And then the last 5 minutes, maybe your mind starts to get calm, and then ding, and then it's time to go to bed. And this is pretty typical. One of the ways, the way that you actually combat that is by understanding that the practice doesn't end just because you get up off the cushion. The practice changes a little bit. The mode changes a little bit. But once you get off the cushion in the morning, the practice continues a whole rest of the day. So this is the simile of the ember, which is a simile that came to me. And so the simile of the ember goes like this. When our ancestors, and I don't mean like what home country your grandfather or grandmother was from. I don't mean that. I mean like 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 years ago, well before civilization and society, when we were all hunter-gatherers, right? We would follow the herd or go different places depending on the season or whatever it was. And if those of you who've started, campfires and things like that, you might have come to the conclusion actually that it's actually a lot harder to start a fire than you thought. Especially if you're trying to start a fire without like lighters and gasoline. It's not easy to start a fire. And, it was even harder for our ancestors who had things like bow drills and stuff like that could take hours and hours and hours to start a fire. And so some ingenious human, it might have actually been not even Homo sapiens, could have been Neanderthals, could have been before that, but that's an aside. Some ingenious humanoid figured out a way that in the morning, there's embers left in the fire. You take an ember and you put it in like a horn or a container with moss and grass and things. And as they're traveling for the day, that keeps the ember alive. Little by little, just a little bit, it's keeping it alive, like on life support. And then wherever they stop for the night to set up camp again, instead of having to go through the whole process of starting a fire from scratch, they create like what in modern day we call a bird's nest. So like just a bunch of like dried tinder, a bunch of dried grass, dried branches or whatever. They create the bird's nest. You can watch this on YouTube, actually. You can see this. And they put the ember in the bird's nest and they start blowing. And then you see the flames come up, right? Fire. And then they put that bird's nest in the fire pit and they have fire for the evening. And so in this simile, the ember is your mindfulness. When you get up from your morning meditation, actually, when you wake up, the second you wake up, you can reflect, oh, got to remember to be mindful. I've had people come, over the years and they'll say, Bhante, I remember to keep the ember with me. Right? They've been able to use that simile that came to my mind years ago in my own practice, to use it to successfully keep that mindset, that attitude that there's always time for practice and any time is a time for practice. And the practice doesn't end just because I'm off the cushion. Remember to carry forth the ember of mindfulness, of Satipatthana, no matter where you're going or what you're doing. And so we have, of course, eating. Eating is one of those things where we don't really pay attention, right? This is a normal eating, right? So you have your phone these days. And you can't blame the phone on this because in the old days, I remember the time before phone. And the time before phones, when I was young, we would read the cereal boxes or the adults would have the newspaper while we're eating. So this is not, you can't blame the phones on this one, but this is how we normally are. We just normally have the phone, whatever, and we're just shoveling food in. And back in the day, you used to actually talk to the people who you eat with. Now everybody's just on their phone, all on the same table, shoveling, right? Shoveling the food in. So that's automatic pilot. What we want to do is to break automatic pilot. We want to go manual. And so to do that, what we need to do is pay full attention to what is happening when we're eating. And so this is some advice I'll give to you for mindfulness of eating. So maybe you have to cook or heat up the food. That's a good time to reflect on the practice, the smell of the food, the anticipation that arises from the, oh, I'm going to have this good food. Or, oh, I'm going to have this food. Right? You observe that. Watch that. And then when you're ready to eat and you sit down and you have the utensil, you can watch your mind. You can observe, as you're sitting down to eat, the anticipation, the desires. Oh, I want to have this. Maybe you look at your plate and you see a bunch of different things and you say, oh, I want to have that first and then this. I like this. I don't like that. Observe all of that that's arising. And then when you have your utensil, you get the food and you put it in your mouth. Now you can observe the feeling, the texture of the food that as it goes into the mouth, the taste. But what I suggest highly is to put the utensil down. Let go of it. Put the utensil down. And then what I used to do, I had to train myself for a long time to do, is I'd put my hand down. And I'd say, stay. The reason being is because what would happen was, while I'm being mindful of what I'm chewing, the second you lose mindfulness, habit kicks in, hand gets the utensil, and it's ready. So it's just like an assembly line, just an assembly line of food. You notice this, right? You're still chewing the food. You can maybe even still taste the food that's in your mouth before the taste goes away, and you already have another one lined up. Observe that. Right? You want to break that habit, break that cycle. So that's why you have the utensil down, hand down, lock it in, and then pay attention fully to what's going on in the mouth. Observe how the process of eating, right? How the teeth are grinding and cutting, how the tongue is actually acting like an orchestra leader, like moving things around. And then how the food gets funneled, right, down to the throat and the swallowing. Observe how the heat or the cold of the food, the textures, the taste, and how that taste fades away. There's so many. I'm just rapid firing things. That's not to say that you should try to observe all of these, but these are all examples of things that you can observe. So when you say, okay, I'm going to be mindful of what I'm chewing, different things will present itself to you, like more prominently than others. You observe that. What is, okay, I'm going to pay attention to what I'm chewing. And then maybe the taste will come up prominently, maybe the texture, whatever will come up. Right? Again, these are not like guidelines. First I have to do this, then I have to do that, then I have to do that to check the taste and such. This is just examples of what you can observe when you're practicing mindfulness of eating. And then once the food is gone and there's nothing left in your mouth, you take up the utensil, food again, same process over again. And then maybe you are eating with family members or eating with somebody. That's okay. That's an opportunity to be mindful as well. That's an opportunity for metta. That's an opportunity for mindfulness. So when you're really, really good at practicing mindfulness for years, you can pay attention to what's going on in your body while you're eating, what the person is telling you, and all kinds of things like that. It's a skill that you can develop to a really high level in that regard. So if you're talking to somebody, that's okay too. You can still put your hand down, you can still focus on the breath, and you can listen. And then after you swallow, you can respond or something like that. That's okay. That's an opportunity to be mindful. But try to do your best to be mindful and fully aware of the whole process of eating. The whole process. Each step, pay attention and see what you can learn. You learn a lot. Like I said about how the second I lose mindfulness, the hand goes right back to the habit. That's something I observed in my own practice. Oh, it's right there. You can see that. So this is my encouragement to you to practice mindfulness of eating and whatever, mindfulness while you're walking, mindfulness while you're driving, mindfulness, everything. It's the same technique in a way, the same process, just a little different depending on what you're doing. Mindfulness when you're going to the bathroom. All right, friends. So we'll leave that there. So 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock will be the walking meditation. I have about 3 or 4 of you who are doing interviews during that time. So when it's about time to come for your time, please be in the Zoom, and I will bring you and I into a breakout room for 10 minutes. Again, we do want to, because we do have a bunch of people doing interviews, we do want to keep within that 10-minute time frame. If there's a general question, you can save it for the Q&A. Or if it's something longer, we can always talk again sometime after the retreat online. But we do want to make sure that everybody who signed up does get their 10 minutes. And then do your walking meditation. And these time, like the walking meditation in the 5 to 6:30 session that are not like, I'm not going to be here necessarily with you to be there. Those times, the temptations to kind of maybe not do it, or to get up and do things and then come back and things, that temptation is going to arise. And try to do your best. If you absolutely don't have to, try to do your best to not do that. Try to really, okay, this is the time for meditation and I'm going to practice during that time. Right? Try to do it. Like those of you, some of you can't do the walking meditation. Again, no problem. Do sitting meditation, no problem. But try not to, just because it's easy and because it's home and because Bhante is not there looking over you. Try not to fall for Mara's trick and not do the meditation. Try to do that. So I will see those of you, will come back fully together for the second block, which will be at 2 o'clock. And I'll see those of you for interviews between 1 and 2. All right. So have a successful meal period and a good walking meditation period. And we'll see you again at 2.